Okay, so, this is the MK Ultra, Mk-Naomi stuff that wasn't in the released information. The released information's kind of misinformation or misconstrued information. I'm about to explain that. The thing you need to take away from this video is you're not you when you're on heavy metals. Okay, so a big chunk of hypnosis is getting you into suggestive state, and you're easier to put into a suggestive state when you don't think. And being emotionally stunted, if you've had me read that damn paper a million times to you, they don't think. Okay, not thinking, mindlessness is a big chunk of being easy to control, surprisingly. But it also has to do with lowering your neuron count. So, here's a thing that was very important that's not in the final report, and it's heavy metals. Poisoning people with heavy metals can alter their psychology. Yeah. An example is they talk about in the experiment they couldn't get a woman to kill somebody under hypnosis, and they're like, oh, that's the end of it. No, that wasn't the end of it. They poisoned that woman with lead. And lead makes you psychopathic. It also gives you anxiety. It makes you antisocial, personality disorder, and an addict. It makes you addicted to shit. And then that woman was more than willing, under hypnosis, to murder people. Yes, poisoning people with heavy metals changes their psychology. You are not you when you're on heavy metals. Another example is during one of their hypnosis. I got to speak to Charles Manson. I can't legally tell you how I spoke to Charles Manson, but I did get to speak to Charles Manson. He was friends with Danny Trejo, and his other name at the Church of the Anal Eaten Mummy is Mephistopheles. Now, selenium, if you OD on selenium, it knocks you out of your emotions. And that's important because for rituals and shit, like, they use selenium so they can convince you you're other people. But the other side is poisoning people with aluminum. MK Ultra, Mk-Naomi makes them timid and scared, and it's probably the government's secret favorite thing to do to people. Have you ever met somebody that's paranoid and scared all the time? It's because they're poisoned with aluminum. If you're part of the church and you know what church I'm talking about, and you're a lady and you tend to be a timid type, it's because your husband poisoned you with aluminum. So, these are just small examples. You gotta know your heavy metals to understand how these things can completely uproot and destroy your life. The church, they like using tetra lead, anxiety, irritability, insomnia, disorientation, delusions, hallucination, memory loss, decreased cognitive function, and even psychosis with chronic exposure. They used to put that in gasoline. Lead in general causes neurotic behaviors and less conscientiousness. This is important because in hypnosis, the faster they can get you into the hypnotic state, the better. And this is why the aerosolized LSD the church uses, and the same stuff that they used in the Mk-Naomi experiment that was aerosolized LSD, was mixed with lead. The tetracotryl crappy lead that was mixed in gasoline was mixed into that spray. When you're sprayed with that, there's something about it that causes you to also forget that, with the combination of LSD and stuff, causes you to forget that you were ever hypnotized to begin with. I don't know enough about hypnosis to actually explain this, but the shorthand from talking with Mephistopheles or Charles Manson was if they get your neurons down low enough, you can be in a constant suggestive state, meaning you can be constantly controlled by other people through suggestion. Yeah. And you're mindless. And to these people, being mindless is the most beautiful psychology you could be. It's why they pop tons of LSD. And the LSD at the church is also laced with lead. So yeah, like I remember Charles when I first talked to him on the phone. He was like, "Don't let them give you that shit. It's how they control you." Mind you, I was already high on connection LSD. Told me they give you fucking water, don't drink it, and that's because they put aluminum in the water. The government sometime in 1970s, like they increased the amount of lead pipes in the ground because they believed that would lead to a better fascist Republican psychology. Are you a Republican or do you just have heavy metal poisoning? I recommend getting EDTA or chelation therapy. Okay? Trust me, when you feel your peripheral nervous system come back online, it's like your soul comes back. That's another thing. Heavy metal poisoning knocks out your peripheral nervous system. I know, it happened to me. It's horrible. And you don't even know it. You're just kind of an idiot. So when Charles sent me, he apparently had documents buried in a briefcase somewhere, and the church went out, dug it up, brought me the papers, and I was reading over it. It's literally just a list of the things heavy metals can do to you and make you easy to control. Like, the church deliberately poisoned a bunch of people with manganese at one point. The manganese poisoning and side effects are the cognitive issues, like you basically can't feel your emotions correctly. Emotional disturbances, sleep disturbance, poor performance, yeah. And they did this to a bunch of women because they wanted to see if you poisoned enough women with manganese, if they would become easier to control. And this is a part of their human trafficking, mind you. You poison people with heavy metals, you alter their psychology, and they become easier to traffic. You poison somebody with aluminum, they're too scared to run. Okay? This is just standard issue shit. Selenium is something they take if they're going to murder somebody. They get high on selenium, they OD on it. It makes it easier for them to murder people. There's a lady in Mk-Naomi, I think it was, the Mk-Naomi experiment. They erased her memory. They did that with these red and white pills they used on me. They're the same pills, and basically MK Ultra and Mk-Naomi was just the church trying to fucking refine their fucking mind control methods through poisoning people with heavy metals. And like, even dude, it just gets messed up because Mephistopheles fucking, he was explaining to me that the women, basically, if you gave the women that Charles Manson mind controlled, it's all lead. The other part of the MK Ultra experiment was raping people. They basically figured out if you rape people or traumatize them, they become emotionally stunted or they develop a trauma brain. And you can control people through rape. Yes. And that's why the church rapes you. Yeah, so if you're part of a church, you're part of a cult, and you're getting fucked in the ass because it's a control thing. It's not something magical, okay? Everybody that rapes you wants you to believe it's something magical. They're just raping you. Okay. So, and they learned this at the MK Ultra thing. If you rape people, you can control them. If you poison them, like, their favorite method is aluminum, once again. They poison you with aluminum. They can basically just terrorize you into doing anything they want because you're terrified. You take a brave man, poison them with aluminum, they're not brave anymore. There are other various metals, and thanks to my big brain, at the end of the legal trial I had with the dudes, the church, I told them to release all the information they had on the psychological effects of heavy metal on the human brain, and I would argue that 90% of Republicans come from heavy metal brains. Something about poisoning people with aluminum makes them anxious and scared, and these people are terrified of their next door neighbors, they're terrified of the world, they want guns, and they don't feel secure, and they can't admit they don't feel secure, and they don't know why. You don't know why, it's because you got heavy metals in your brain. Even the church members themselves, they have high anxiety issues, and here's a fun fact, they drink what they call them malts. It's Coke, dirty sodas. It's Coke and milk. Yeah, soda and milk. Milk has an effect where it actually deactivates heavy metals for a short while. It coats it in calcium. And Coca-Cola, or sodas have EDTA in them, so it removes the heavy metals. So it's actually a desperate attempt for the body to relieve itself. And they themselves feel euphoria from this because they are in constant pain from these heavy metals constantly destroying their bodies. Now, another part of MK Ultra and Mk-Naomi, it's kind of a mistailing that it was just a enhanced interrogation trying to figure out what drugs worked. Yes, they did learn a whole bunch about the drugs. Mephistopheles explained to me that the way you give somebody a secondary personality is you get them high on Ganesh and then you hit them with PCP and then you can hypnotize them into having a secondary personality. And they apparently do this at the church at like, if you get to like tier 4, they give you a second name, and then they bring that second name to life after they get you high as fuck on drugs, and then they hit you with PCP. And once you're under PCP, they hypnotize you. And basically, as far as I'm concerned, when Charles explained it, this is my theory on it. Maybe they do give you an actual psychology, but it appears they name your ego, and then they switch you in your ego, so you become 100% ego. And we got into this because the entire thing is this stuff is basically designed for emotionally stunted people. Like, they do not like fully developed, mentally, like, developed people. When you're fully developed, you have too many neurons. You have too much complex thought. And that the complex thought gets in the way of the hypnosis. You are harder to hypnotize if you have complex thought and morals and values. But you can disrupt these morals and values by poisoning somebody with lead. An example of this is there was a lady during MK Ultra that they kept hypnotizing to shoot another woman, and they couldn't get her to do it. So eventually what they did was they poisoned her with lead, and they kept poisoning her, kept giving it to her until she was in a low neuron, constantly suggestive state. And then they hypnotized her. And then she pulled a gun and attempted to shoot this woman. And they actually successfully got somebody to shoot and kill somebody during the experiment. These hypnosis experiments go deeper than that. They get more fucked up with constantly getting people high on drugs and then terrorizing them with repeating things. And the repetition therapy was fascinating because it's more about breaking people than it is about, like, because once again, if you disrupt the neurons, one of the things that was part of the Mk-Naomi, I think it was there was this really happy lady they just completely destroyed with heavy metals. Just on every level, they destroyed her with constant rape and constant heavy metal exposure, and like it was just straight up cruel. What they did to her was just straight up cruel, and anytime she showed any signs of joy, they just destroyed that. They were just nasty people about that. I don't know what about that. Apparently something about it. The goal is low neuron activity. And then part of their telepathy was interesting because the closest you get to telepathic is if you lower somebody's neurons and you get them to like the right level. If you match somebody else's neurons with your neurons and you have a lucid dream, you put them in the lucid dream states, these people can kind of telepathically communicate, but not really. There was some lady that watched some guy that saw a movie about horses, and some lady had a dream about horses. And that's about as far as that goes. They had a couple other things. There was a woman in particular that was really good at it, but they also found out, like, basically, I don't know what level of low-ass neurons you need, but you need really low neurons and really high levels of, like, heavy metals in your system. And I say heavy metals because there's different combinations for different psychologies. Yes, they can alter your psychology by giving you different combinations of different heavy metals depending on what they want you to do and how they want you to act. Okay, but the issue is it all ends with you getting Alzheimer's, becoming anxious, and neurotic. So you're always going to be weird. No matter what. Think those guys that have tinfoil hats. Those guys actually have aluminum poisoning, and it's kind of funny that their brain's like, hey, we need more aluminum on our head. I would argue it's your body trying to tell you you have too much aluminum, you need to get that shit out. turning your hair gray, premature aging. Heavy metals are constantly emitting radiation. They're constantly destroying your cellular structure. Uh, Worthy things to note is the notes in the MK Ultra experiment briefly talked about the theory of telepathic communication, because basically the human body has neurons, it has electronics, it has everything it needs to, I guess, be a radio. And the idea with heavy metals was using the LSD gives you these little capillary things in your head. They're like bubbles, and when you have the LSD mixed with lead, specifically lead, I don't know why it's lead. I don't. I guess lead's probably the least toxic out of the metals. I don't know. Specifically lead, with those little cavitation bubbles that LSD forms, it creates a radio, like a radiation wave signal that's kind of telepathic, but not really. Allegedly, they found you can actually communicate with people through LSD tripping lead. You can have people telepathically communicate. Like, they can broadcast the drug trip. They can do a guided LSD trip on you, I guess. Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah, that's the secret of MK Ultra and Mk-Naomi. I don't recommend anybody try this unless you're really rich and, like, you're about to dodge a whole bunch of legal tape. Aerosolized LSD mixed with lead is another thing, and it always has to be mixed with the tetralead. It's specifically the tetralead. They're obsessed with the tetralead. I don't know why it's the tetralead. Seems completely dangerous, but yeah. The tetralead, from also being addictive, when they use the aerosolized LSD and they get you with it, it apparently something about the combination of the shit mixed in it causes the weird telepathic mind control suggestive state instantly. And once again, if you poison somebody with enough heavy metals, you lower their neurons. Well, the shit they used on me to erase my brain was lead, GABA, and Botox toxin. Yeah. And the way that works is they have to hit you with LSD first, and they get you to remember a specific event, and then they get you to drink that, and then you forget that specific event. That's what happens. What other things are there that are worthy of note? Charles was very specific. He was very much against the church, and he was actually, according to him, trying to stop a white supremacist war. And the church does actually plan on murdering everybody and taking their kids, because they already did it once in Utah. They already murdered these people and enslaved their kids, and their plan is to use that plan again, but this time all over the U.S. It's going to be aluminum phosphide and adrenochrome. They're all just going to send people out. They apparently took over all the fast food places. They're going to murder everybody and then take their kids. And apparently that's their plan, because the white and splendid must reign supreme forever, I guess. I don't know. That's what Charles Manson was trying to warn the world about, but he couldn't, because the CIA and FBI are both assets of the church, and they just mindlessly do what they're told. And part of it is the neuron training. They themselves poison their own members with lead because they tell them it makes them telepathic. And hit or miss, I haven't ever seen anybody really give me a good example of their telepathy. Every time I've tried to quantify it can't be done. And even in the MK Ultra, it was always obscure shit. It was never complete 100%. It was like as if when you're trying to telepathically communicate with another person, they can only use the information they already have, not what you have in your head. You can't transmit that. Yeah, it's bizarre.